a legal earthquake for Fox News.
We begin with some breaking news in one of the most consequential media trials in decades.
The parties have resolved their case. In other words, they have settled.
The Dominion software system has been tagged as one allegedly capable of flipping votes.
This president is looking at the prospect of having this election stolen from him.
We don't know how many votes were stolen on Tuesday night. We don't know anything about the software that many say was rigged. We don't know. We ought to find out.
Fox News Media and Tucker Carlson have mutually agreed to part ways.
All right, job done. Hello, everyone, again. I'm David Walmsley, Editor-in-Chief of Canada's Globe and Mail newspaper. The man who took on Fox News is, of course, John Poulos, the CEO of Dominion Voting Systems, who started the company 20 years ago in his attic in Toronto, which we'll come back to. And today it has grown to be the second largest provider of voting machines in North America. Thanks for being here, John.
Thanks for having me.
When John and I initially talked about coming here, John said, I'd love to, but I'm going to be at trial. I won't have a chance. Well, as you've seen over the last couple of weeks, the bizarreness and the high drama that you've obviously experienced, and which the audience is obviously well aware of, is probably second to none. I mean, your win against Fox in court, which is the first of many fights you're taking on, puts a price on the truth. And at this Truth Tellers Conference, we're delighted to have you here because that is a benchmark that's going to see us go forward, I think, in a better way. In your own words, over the last number of months or the last couple of weeks, what precisely just happened?
Well, the whole thing has been completely surreal for us. So it started in the days following November 4th, 2020, when unbelievably false accusations were being lobbed against me and my firm and my employees, my customers, which were so reckless and so obviously false. It just didn't seem real. And as the days went by, the weeks went by, and it persisted, we're not talking about the media getting one thing wrong in the pursuit of the truth. We're talking about consistently broadcasting, endorsing, amplifying false statements weeks and weeks in the face of everyone knowing the truth. And so our litigation was literally the last thing we could do that we didn't try to restore our name.
Case of last resort. Among the most extraordinary claims is the idea that you created Dominion with the help of Hugo Chavez of Venezuela. Don't take my word for it. Let's take a look at a clip from a press conference with Donald Trump's lawyers, Sidney Powell and Rudy Giuliani.
The Dominion voting systems, the Smartmatic technology software, and the software that goes in other computerized voting systems here as well, not just Dominion, were created in Venezuela at the direction of Hugo Chavez to make sure he never lost an election.
And so you have Sidney Powell, but you also have what I find to be the tragic, heroic situation of the mayor of New York in 9/11, Rudy Giuliani, standing there on the side of the screen, sweating and losing credibility by the minute. And this is a direct attack on your company, on your staff, on your own integrity. It's pure fantasy, it's an invention, but a lot of people believed it. You received phone calls from politicians who wanted to check it out. Tell us what was the response to this and to other press conferences.
We were receiving hundreds of phone calls, most of them death threats, very detailed, just terrible, terrible voicemails, emails. But yeah, one of the calls, actually during that, it's still tough for me to listen to, but I was on the phone with a senator from Michigan, a Republican, and we were both, to say we were freaking out is an understatement. It was his comment that said, these people are trying, willingly or unwillingly, to incite a civil war, and that's exactly how we felt. It was so inherently implausible, so reckless, and sadly that it didn't end there. That was only November 19th. The defamation campaign on us persisted many more weeks and months.
And it's interesting you're able to date that to November 19th.
I have all the dates in my head. I know all the dates, unfortunately.
Precisely not the man you want suing you, I think. So you've received this absolute tsunami of hatred. You have the credibility being challenged. The ability for you to change the true arrow of the story is increasingly difficult for you. You say it already that you felt the need to prosecute a defamation case because there was no other alternative for you. You'd written letters of retraction, I presume, to
We wrote letters of retraction. We hired a crisis communication firm that came from, he was the press secretary for the Bush White House and close friends with Maria Bartiromo. In the case of Fox, that was actually the first broadcast on November 8th, where she had Sidney Powell on, and she introduced her as an attorney for the Trump campaign, which of course is not true, and asked her about Dominion. And we had sent literally thousands of documents. We had pointed all of the characters that were defaming us and the different entities. We had pointed them to the Attorney General. We had pointed them to Department of Homeland Security, bipartisan election officials. We pointed them to the fact that we had over 1,000 hand recounts of paper ballots. So it was never really about not knowing the truth.
And this was because you are part of a regulated industry, and the scrutiny from the Department of Homeland Security is to ensure there's a fair electoral process.
It is extremely regulated. There is not a line of source code that does not get checked by a third-party government accredited, by a government-accredited lab, full transparency on the tabulation, and frankly, the founding of Dominion was based on paper ballots.
There was also legal conflict where a legal team working with Fox were involved in checking out Dominion when you had been created many years before.
If you're referring to Kirkland and Ellis, was conflicted out from Fox, from defending Fox, because they actually did the diligence on Dominion, and part of that was doing the diligence on who's selling the company, i.e. me. They reviewed the fact that, or they would have, that I went through a CFIUS process, which is the Committee of Foreign Investment in the United States, back in 2010. And ultimately, they were not able to work with Fox on this case.
So your tires have been well and truly kicked. You end up facing a court in Delaware. So I wanted to ask a question which I think puts a flip side to what we've heard a lot of today, and that is this question of truth tellers and us relying on law to get the truth out. Do you think that the standard is too high to be able to sue the media?
Personally, I don't. I think that the standard should be fairly high. I think that and this is just my opinion, just one person's opinion, but I think that we rely on the media to hold our government to account, public officials to account, institutions to account, and to make a mistake in the pursuit of the truth, I think happens. But it's incumbent on those media institutions to recognize when that happens. I think it's the whole point why there's fact-checking departments to course correct when that does happen.
And you pointed out, we were having a brief conversation earlier, that Jay Wallace, Fox, had a point where he said, weak ratings make good journalists do bad things.
I think it says it all.
Are you concerned about the effect on the First Amendment?
No, I'm not. And I'm not a First Amendment scholar by any means, but the First Amendment, from what I know of it, does not give anyone the right to lie and knowingly lie and defame people. That's the whole point of why there's defamation law.
So when we go back to the beginning of Dominion, can you tell us why you're called Dominion?
Well, we kind of went back in history. What we were looking to do is apply technology to help blind people vote on paper privately and independently. And we came across two pieces of legislation, and the one that we ended up adopting the name of was the Dominion Act in 1919 in Canada, which, among other things, expanded the right to vote for women. So we thought, we're trying to expand the franchise to other voting segments that otherwise haven't been able to vote privately. So we thought that was a cool name.
And you saw the Hanging Chads issue of 2000 in the election, where clearly the paper wasn't keeping up to date with modern technology, and you launched the company.
We did. So the 2000 election is when the Hanging Chads happened, and 2 years after that is when the United States Congress appropriated roughly $4 billion to help solve these issues and modernize their election system. And we were one of 93 companies in North America that were chasing this problem, trying to address it. And we were certainly the smallest back in 2002. And ultimately, we chose to go the route of paper-based voting. There was definitely a regional bias. In Canada, we had never seen anything other than paper-based voting. And it was a complete divergence between what all of the companies in the United States were going. They were moving towards ATM-style voting machines where there were no paper ballots. We were just, I guess, too stupid or too lucky. We just went the other way.
So a company that was built to help the blind gain accessibility to the electoral system in a safe and transparent way, that was built on the dysfunction of a previous federal campaign in the States, is suddenly public enemy number one when it comes to the idea that the 2020 election was stolen. So you feel there's no choice but to go to court. And that is not for the faint of heart. Tell us a little bit emotionally about what you went through and your staff went through.
It was very difficult to do, not to mention just practically spending millions of dollars a month and frankly escalating to tens of millions of dollars a month. It's very difficult. But on the other hand, we were chatting just outside earlier. My mother-in-law's sister was calling my mother-in-law and said, "You never told us that John was from Venezuela." And
which is heartbreaking. I mean, it's very funny in the absurd, but it's heartbreaking.
Well, when trusted media says things to their viewers, the viewers believe it. And if you think that the media outlets that we've sued aren't trusted, I mean, I just think that you haven't traveled enough in the United States.
So you get to court and paint the picture as the jury selection is taking place. It's finally got to the point where there's not going to be any court step settlement. It's going ahead. The jury selection's begun. What are you thinking and what happens next?
I was thinking that I couldn't wait for the opening statements. My lead counsel, Stephen Shackelford, was ready to go. And it was right around that time when there was a mediator involved, and I was sitting at the desk, and my lawyer slid a piece of paper across, and it had a number on it with a yes and no. And so a couple of things went through my mind. One was there was no video ever to be played at trial, and the judge made that very clear. He went even so far as to say that he checked with the Supreme Court in Delaware. It's never happened. So there was no video, which I think a lot of people don't understand. There wasn't even going to be rebroadcasting of any of the audio transcript. So really it was just another written record of the already written record that we had put forward in our court filings. And so the offer came, literally slid across the table, and it was an offer that was just slightly higher than what our independent expert valued our company at on Election Day of 2020. And then I thought of the next 6 to 8 weeks and the effect that it would have on all of my people and our customers who all said yes to the request of testifying, even though it was really not good for their career, but they were intent on getting the truth out there. And so really the only question for me, I never really doubted whether or not we would go and get the right verdict. I think that the jury system is the best thing we have, and they come up with the right conclusion. But it's just a matter of, is the number going to be higher than that or lower than that? And ultimately, when I spoke to my partner about it, we just felt that that is a very big price to put on truth in journalism, and it's probably not a bad precedent.
And the request for $1.7 billion was under New York law, which was what the jurisdiction for this was, is basically 2 times compensatory total of the valuation of the company.
That number, the 1.7, didn't include punitive. It was our company at 2020 plus a gross up for taxes plus costs that we otherwise wouldn't have spent, security, outside firms, and then lost profits in the intervening year or 2 years.
And so the total, some say, oh, you settled, you should have gone all the way through. Any regrets?
No, I don't think so. Definitely we feel a lot of emotion. It's hard to articulate, but happiness is just not one of them. Mm-hmm. It's more relief. Mm-hmm. We still have 6 more.
And that was to the point. I mean, that's the problem, right? It's not just one. You didn't sign the settlement, though, did you, until one very important thing happened. What was that?
That's right. So I was about to sign the settlement. At one point, we had delayed 2 hours in the courtroom, and people kind of suspected what was going on. But at one point, they said, "John, you have to go into the other room." And I reached to sign, and it came back that my lawyer's like, "Oh, the wire is not ready yet." That's when it first hit me. They're wiring the money right now. So they didn't, but by the time we left the courtroom, they had wired the money. And that's when it kind of hit home for me what I put myself in the position of on a board seat. They must have been told regular updates on this case for the last 2.5 years. And I would have loved to have been a fly on the wall when they would call together to approve that wire.
The man who took on Fox News, John Poulos. Thank you. Thank you.